This book defies categorization. Where do I put it? There's a romance, but they don't kiss for 300 pages. There's religion, and people realize something is wrong, but they don't exactly deconstruct. There is an apocalypse, but the world doesn't end. Hi friends, I'm Lane. I'm reading and writing Christian fiction, and this book talks about doubt in a way that had me hooked. Today's review is Archangel by Sharon Shinn, published in 1996. In the world of Samaria, people live in peace, governed by angels, and following a code from their god, Jehovah. Music connects them to the god, especially the annual singing event called the Gloria. This year, Gabriel will take over as the Archangel at the Gloria. But first, he must find his prophesied human wife, Rachel. And he doesn't realize that the current Archangel, Raphael, has been working behind the scenes to keep Rachel away and end the harmony and the peace of the people of Samaria. Gabriel finds that Rachel has been enslaved, and even though he rescues her, she is not interested in helping him on his required tasks. They have a long journey to work together as a couple and to save their world from ruin. My short summary doesn't do this book justice. It is complicated. When I first started reading this, it was so weird and different from other books. I set it down for a month. But then I came back and finished it within 24 hours. The world is unique, and I was constantly being surprised. I can't think of another book to compare this to. It deals with subjects of faith, religion, doubt, and destruction in thoughtful and provocative ways. There are many rules in Samaria. Like Christians, they have a Bible, the Librera. But this text is both a songbook and a spell book. Angels, and sometimes humans, can pray for rain, for health, or maybe even destruction, if they follow the music and if Jehovah can hear them well. So there's almost no doubt of the existence of God. It's so easy for God to prove himself when all you have to do is read the correct text and get the desired results. Yet the reader, or me at least, starts to doubt God throughout the book. The story's hero, Gabriel, is 30 years old. Angels have normal lifespans, even though they call human mortals, but thankfully this isn't a 500-year-old vampire/teen romance. Angels have to marry humans, and the wife of the Archangel is called the Angelica. Gabriel is an excellent singer, committed to Jehovah and to good morals. He is almost the only angel who seems to care about slavery, but he's also a bit awkward and antisocial. He's often thoughtless. Like all angels, he has giant wings. He can travel quickly, and he's expected to lead and care for the world. He's also supposed to be a hottie. Black hair, blue eyes, tan skin, and perfect white fluffy wings. I picked out an image for him, although I'll try not to compare this with Supernatural too much, because honestly, they don't have that much in common other than the names. Rachel is 25 years old. Rachel has beautiful curly copper hair that is Rapunzel long. But I'm sticking with supernatural images with this one so she can be Jo. Adopted and raised by the Adori people after her childhood village was destroyed. Adori are dark-skinned, wanderers, often sold into slavery, and the only group of people who have even slightly different beliefs about Jehovah. Rachel has spent the last 5 years enslaved, and while she has a strong, unbroken spirit, she is traumatized. And her new community doesn't get her. She is so stubborn that even though I empathize with her, it can be annoying, especially when it comes to romance.
Quite a gal you got here.
Oh yeah, she's a pistol.
She is one of the best singers of all time, but she keeps this hidden until the end. I wish this was a movie. There's a lot of singing. Okay, I will do a season 1 villain for Raphael. Jehovah's chosen leader, Raphael, has forsaken the people. He doesn't care if the farmers beg for rain. He's enriched the merchant class at the expense of everyone else. Worst of all, he's allowed slavery to flourish. Now, Gabriel is appointed to be the new leader. Raphael thinks he can make a 2028 run, even though his Archangel term is supposed to be up. The Adori show up several times in this story. Rachel considers them her people, as she was adopted in. There are some weird racial issues where the Adori are kind of like Black Americans. They are the only ethnic group that gets enslaved in this world. Otherwise, they're nomadic, which actually makes them sound more like Romani. At least the way Rachel tells it, they are better than everyone else. So they get idealized in the story in a way that actually feels patronizing. Rachel keeps being shocked to hear about how others live, and she explains how the Adori do it better. The two interesting things that stuck out to me is that the Adori don't marry. If you don't like your partner anymore, you move on. And they have herbal medical control over their fertility. All children are wanted children in their community. What the Adori believe, she said, is that the bond to a child is the one tie that cannot be broken. So to have a child is a decision to be taken only after a great deal of thought. And an unwanted child is the greatest burden a woman can bear. Women have ways to prevent such a thing from occurring. I also know ways to enhance fertility. Every Adori who has ever wanted a child has eventually had one. Again, Rachel was a little snobby with that one. It feels like she's judging women who don't have control over their fertility, which in that world would be like literally all of them. It's nice her people have completely resolved the medical side of mothering. Knowledge enough isn't enough for justice. I'm living in a world where some people who have access to reproductive medical care like to deny that care to others. But these two characters won't get anywhere near making babies in this story. This is not a romance-centered book. Although we are rooting for the characters to get together, they do not kiss until page 323, and then one more time at the end on page 389. I'm good with that because Rachel was forced into marriage right after 5 years of slavery. She really deserves some time to recuperate and make her own choices. Some of their early interactions unfortunately fall into the category of domestic violence, even though it may not have been interpreted that way in the 90s. When they leave the town of her enslavement, she starts to call down a curse on the city. Gabriel, fearing real power behind her words, grabs her arm and shakes her until she stops. Soon after, he flies her up to his city in the mountains, even though she told him she was afraid of heights and she couldn't bear it. Once she's free, she starts hitting him and screaming, and he slaps her across the face to stop the hysteria. I don't think those scenes were supposed to be romantic, at least. They existed to show how much Rachel was struggling and how little Gabriel knew to help her. Still, I wish I could scratch those parts out. I'm glad they only happened at the beginning of the story rather than building up to the DV. Gabriel does a number of things Rachel considers unforgivable. She often thinks about how she hates him. One was intense. He gives her a public wedding gift of special bracelets. She says she will never wear them. He doesn't think about how, when he freed her, he had to ask for someone to cut off the huge manacles around her wrists. And yes, having an enslaved person wear chains all day, every day is gratuitous, and one of the reasons why I put this book down at the beginning. He does try to understand why she so publicly rejected him and his gift, and she has to show him her scarred and damaged forearms. He is remorseful. She also accuses him of being embarrassed of her past. I wish he could have said something early like, "I don't care about your past. It's not your fault. I'm proud of you." Unfortunately, he is embarrassed. He doesn't want anyone talking about it. He's the good guy because he's opposed to slavery, yet he does a pretty bad job of being kind to someone who's been enslaved.
I was being bad cop.
You were being bad at everything.
I realize I'm not selling you on Gabriel as a character right now, but I really enjoyed reading about a character who is truly flawed. And Gabriel isn't flawed in the sexy way, like all the romantasy heroes that are popular right now. He is flawed like a human who is growing and learning. Gabriel is different, even by the standards of the other angels. Rachel eventually helps him to be a little more self-aware. I think Gabriel's on the spectrum. Since this was written in the 90s, I don't think the author was saying to herself, this is an autistic character, but I kept thinking that over and over. Here's how his stepmom describes him. He can be very sure of himself, and so other people's opinions do not always matter to him. He thinks it is a very easy matter to separate right from wrong, good from bad, so subtleties often elude him. He's not patient, but he's never less than committed to making things right. It's important to note, all the angels kind of suck.
I thought angels were supposed to be guardians. Fluffy wings, halos, Michael Landon. Not dicks.
They have superpowers, they have all the money, they run the world, and all the humans are desperately trying to have kids with them. When Rachel points out obvious poverty and inequalities under their angelic noses, they have a hard time even seeing it. It is disgraceful, Rachel interrupted. Her trembling had stopped. She was feeling instead the steadying power of righteous rage. Disgraceful that in a town less than a vertical mile from an angel hold, there should be starving children on the street, reduced to begging and robbery to survive. The angels both stared at her. Obadiah, predictably, began to laugh. But that was part of what is so impactful about this story. Privilege is often hard to recognize. Rachel carves out a happy ending for herself at the end of the book because she figures out how to fix the imbalance of power between herself and her husband. Throughout the story, she learns about the Angelica named Hagar, the greatest singer of all time. Rachel is the only person in the world who can sing with the range of Hagar. So she's basically Mariah Carey. It should be annoying that Rachel is so Mary Sue perfect at something, but her character's honestly balanced out by being complex and frustrating. Anyway, long ago, Hagar built herself a house in the mountains that is only accessible by miles of walking. She spiked the mountain road so no angel could fly and land there. Angels hate walking. So either no angel will bother her, or they have to humble themselves to visit her. So the last scene of the book is Gabriel walking the long road to see Rachel. There's hope that these two can have a real relationship, not just an arranged marriage. Anyway, that's just to let you know that there is a happy romance ending. I, of course, am going to talk about the weird theology instead. The character I haven't mentioned yet is Josiah, one of the 3 oracles in this world. We'll do the atheist prophet from Supernatural for him. That's actually weirdly perfect. Josiah gets to talk directly to Jehovah, or at least he talks to their God more clearly than anyone else gets to. The more we learn about this communication, the more confusing it gets. Josiah prays to a lighted screen, and he has knobs and dials to communicate. It seems more like technology than divinity. There's also a funny bit of fantasy tech. New babies are marked with the kiss of the god, a crystal implanted in their arm when, like an infant baptism, they are dedicated to Jehovah. It seems to work like a tracking system. Josiah knows whom Jehovah wants you to marry, and also if someone is alive or dead. It also works like a soulmate finder, lighting up when you're close to your true love. Or at least the person the god thinks ought to be your true love. Josiah and Rachel chat about theology, about 100 pages into the story. Rachel, like all Adori, is a heretic. She calls the god Yovah instead of Jehovah, and says that he is not the chief god, but only a tool of the higher god. This is very interesting to me, Josiah said. He did not seem at all offended by what he must consider her heresy. The people of Samaria are, by and large, a very homogeneous group. Bearing some social distinctions of money and class, they have a remarkably similar worldview and theological base. All of them believe in the same God and that God's principles. All except the Adori. Why did the Adori differ? Who taught them their precepts? When did the schism occur? Rachel was totally baffled and showed it. He laughed. This question isn't answered in the text, but I find it interesting too. In our world, there are many schisms. Even if everyone on the planet was a Christian and we ignored the many diverse faiths elsewhere, people would still disagree. The Catholic Church, though its name means universal, split with the Orthodox. Then the Anglicans split off, and the Protestants split from the Catholics. From there, the divisions were endless. Lutherans and Presbyterians, Methodists and Baptists, and now people who call themselves non-denominational, so you can't even pin them down. It's hard for me to imagine a world where everyone believes the same thing. Josiah explains that the people of Samaria were placed there by Jehovah only 500 years ago, so perhaps it's easier to stay unified. I imagine that having prayers or magic that always works and a Bible written in the original language probably helps with unity too. Josiah and Rachel discuss the nature of their God. Rachel is, of course, frustrated with her arranged marriage to a man she doesn't love. Josiah smiled. Well, now, I think Jehovah's motives don't always match human desires. I have always thought he brought a man and a woman together for the underlying purposes having more to do with generations and bloodlines and genetic mixes. What? Children, he explained. If you chart the history of the great leaders of Samaria, you will often find their parents were those who were united by Jehovah. That is, those who were drawn together by the kiss. I wrote "you" on the page here. That gets creepy and racial quick. And Rachel witnesses this as a problem when she lives in the angel city. People come hoping to birth more angels. It's always a 50-50 shot. And angel offspring get to live in power and luxury, while many of the human children become homeless, sparking the anger Rachel had with her new angel companions. In a much later conversation, Rachel admits that she feels distant from her God. She feels bad that she hasn't loved Jehovah enough lately. That is a very interesting concept, Josiah said. Loving Jehovah. I'm not sure I love him myself. That brought Rachel straight up to the edge of the big chair to stare at him. But, of all people, he is not an easy God to love, Josiah said calmly. He's not very warm. He is a just God, that I do believe. He has a great deal of passion and a great deal of power. But does he love us? I have never been sure of that. He guards us well, he guides us, and he lets us make our own way until we err. Perhaps that is a kind of love, but it is not very affectionate. She could not help laughing, and I thought I spoke heresy. This is a pretty important question about the character of God. I'm writing a story at the moment, which includes conversations about the Bible story where Abraham almost sacrifices his son Isaac, according to the command of God. It's one of those weird stories you reread as an adult and say, what? Why is God being so awful? And I like to think Abraham would have felt the same way. Maybe God is all-powerful and must be obeyed, but you couldn't actually love a God who asked you to kill your child. And I couldn't believe such a God loved God's human children either. Like most Bible stories, it's more complex than the version we give to kids, and I like to reflect on it, even though I don't have a full answer. My thought about a loving God is reflected in the people. The Adori people believe in a loving God, so they treat each other with love. The rich and the powerful in this story believe that God likes them best, so they treat others carelessly. In contrast to love, there's a theme in the story that the threat of punishment encourages people to behave better. Gabriel even specifically says, there will always be powerful men who are tempted to misuse their power, and the threat of a divinity with even greater strength is all that keeps them in check. This is a really interesting theme for a story. I'm pretty sure that doesn't work in our world. I can think of many instances of powerful people using God to justify themselves and to scare others into obedience. Divine right of kings, manifest destiny. And Bible verses about fear aren't usually my favorite. Proverbs 9:10 says the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. But this makes me wonder, If the president of my country had a true fear of God, would he act better? America recently started bombing Iran, and there are some real alarming stories about military leaders talking about holy war. I don't like that. So while we're seeing a misuse of religion, maybe there's an inverted version where they would actually be scared of God rather than using God to scare other people. I'm not sure. Here was an important part of A Christmas Carol, where the old miser Scrooge sees the error of his ways.
Whose lonely grave is this? Why, yours, Ebenezer. The richest man in the cemetery. Please.
Raphael does not see the error of his ways. Instead, he kidnaps Rachel so that she can't sing the Gloria on the appointed day. With Trump-like glee, he tells her he has gone 20 years without ever experiencing consequences for his actions. Rachel, it is such a monumental but such a liberating thought. There is no God at all. He does not guard us. He does not punish us. He does not know if we live or breathe or die. He is not there. I have contravened every law laid down in the Librera, and he has not struck me dead. There is no God. If Gabriel fails to lead the Gloria, and there is no Gloria, we will all survive. If I fail to lead it, and if it is never sung again, nothing will happen at all. We have been enslaved all these years to the idea of a God without any proof of his existence. And now is the time that the people of Samaria realize what they have loved and feared and obeyed as a divine and comic host. That's the plan. The Librera says if the Gloria isn't sung, Jehovah will strike down the mountain, the first warning in a series of calamities. If that doesn't happen, if Raphael is right, he doesn't need to keep pretending to follow the rules. It's okay to break the emoluments clause. It's okay to pay hush money. It's okay to incite an insurrection. Although Rachel and Gabriel managed to undo Raphael's plots at every turn, he still took one last stand, stopping the Gloria and collecting his followers on the mountains to defy Jehovah and test the claim that the mountain would be destroyed. Even in that climactic moment, I was wondering, is Jehovah real? Will the mountain be destroyed? Many had decided to make the hard climb to the top of Mount Gallo to prove their allegiance to Raphael and their defiance of Jehovah. Those who stayed behind were fearful, accusatory, and close to panic, as Gabriel quickly found. They bombarded him with questions and demands. Is there a God? Can you save us? How can you let Raphael imperil us all? Call down the lightning now. Prove to us Jehovah is strong. And he soothed them as best he could, which was not very well. And here's the scene that night. I'm going to read you the whole thing, so sit tight, or hire me to read your audiobook. As the sky turned black, the mountaintop turned golden. Raphael's followers had taken their fire tubes and set the peak ablaze. In the brilliant orange light, one great shadowy shape leapt upward, a black silhouette of huge wings beating and long arms extended before him. The perfect acoustics of the plain carried his words to all the shocked listeners in the field below. I am Jehovah, and I am Lucifer, he cried. I am your leader and your king. Look at me and know that Raphael is your God. And he flung back the shadow of his head and stretched his hands to heaven and dared anyone to contradict him. And the seam of the heavens ripped open and a white light sizzled across the sky. The mountaintop exploded in a jagged blaze of fire. Thunder ricocheted from one stone peak to another in waves of crashing sound. Light flashed a second time, and a great white sheet of it suspended like a writhing wall between heaven and earth. Everything was visible in that single frozen flame of merciless light, screaming faces, tumbling rock, falling bodies. The third bolt fell before the thunder could sound again, and all that could be seen by that brilliant blaze was a gaping cavity of black. Then a deep-throated boom rolled across the plain, gaining volume and momentum as it traveled. The earth heaved underfoot, buckled by the weight of that sound. The mountains themselves rocked forward and back. The tumultuous roar went on, so loud it absorbed all other noise and created a sort of silence. Then abruptly there was no air. There was no light. There was no sound. Rachel staggered sideways as the earth stopped shivering. All that held her up was Gabriel's hard hold on her wrist. Naomi's hand had been ripped from hers, but Gabriel's fingers never relaxed their grip. Disoriented and terrified, she cried out, and he swung her into his arms, cradling her head against his chest, covering her blinded eyes. The winds came then, rushing across the dark plain. Rachel felt Gabriel brace himself against one fierce gust and then another. His wings wrapped themselves around her, and his back took most of the force, but still she felt the shudder and the whine of the gale whipping around her head, razoring through his feathers, shaking the very foundations of the world. And the rain followed, sudden and soaking, a rain that would last forever. It lashed down with the force and fury of a river in full spate, driving them backward, turning the ground beneath them to swampland. Hail fell briefly but brutally, beating upon the heads and upraised arms. It hit the soggy earth with a sound like a hand slapping across a face. Then it slackened and died away, and only the rain was left washing through the cool air like the tears of Jova falling. Still cocooned within Gabriel's embrace, Rachel heard sounds and voices begin to form again in the soggy dark. "Take shelter! Everyone to your tents and your awnings! Build a fire if you can. Where's Ava? Where's Ariel? Has anyone seen Josiah?" The words, the very sounds themselves, seemed remote and tinny to Rachel, as if they were shouted from a great distance, or as if her ears had been permanently damaged, scarred by the impact of the god's wrath. For he had struck the mountain, and Raphael was dead. Yet they had lived. Gabriel himself had kept her safe. Rachel did not even try, but she knew she could not break free of his hold. She did not want to. Did you know that was going to happen? I didn't know. I'm a little scared of Jova now. Now that I've spoiled this whole book for you, I hope you'll go read it. Okay, that's not true. I have one more spoiler. It's the worst spoiler. So here's something weird. After I finished reading and started working on my review, I read the front page again. It had a little blurb I'd overlooked before. And frankly, I didn't like it. I preferred when Jova was a mystery. But if you want everything spoiled, here it is. Generations later, the armed starship Jehovah still looms over the planet of Samaria, programmed to unleash its arsenal if peace was not sustained. But an age of corruption has come to the land, threatening that peace and placing the Samarians in grave danger. Their only hope lies in the crowning of a new Archangel. Jova is a spaceship? Does that mean this is actually a sci-fi book? I guess Josiah really was talking to a computer the whole time, and everyone on the planet is microchipped. I mean, that answers all the questions. It works because the spaceship has weather control and laser beams. I think I'd like this better if it was like a popular fan theory rather than canon. I'm not mad, but I really liked how doubt was an important part of this story, and yet knowing that there is a dry scientific answer for everything frustrates me. Gabriel and Josiah had a conversation when Gabriel realized how many angels and Sumerians were losing their faith. Gabriel said, "Jova will not be so pleased with me when he ponders my doubting nature. It is good for a man to doubt. It makes him think up proofs. It strengthens his beliefs. Jova will not think ill of you for doubting," said Josiah. "Then he is gracious indeed." I also think it's healthy to doubt. Unfortunately for Gabriel and his people, Doubting and thinking up proofs won't bring him closer to the truth, but he does lead his people in a way of justice and harmony, and that's probably more important than knowing that you worship a spaceship. Still, I enjoyed reading a book that talks so much about doubt and wove that into the story in fascinating ways. If you know any more books like that, please let me know in the comments. I'd love to take a look. Thank you for watching.